And the week before that, guy got sick. Now they say this, COVID thing is coming back and going around again, and who really knows? But I do know that I had zero voice, and it's really hard to kind of do one of these things if you have no voice. So here we are, back in the saddle again. Hope everybody is having a wonderful Sunday or Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, whenever it is that you decide to watch or listen to this. Thank you all to those of you that are joining me here on my YouTube channel at TIDtalk, where you can also find a bunch of other shows coming back tonight as well. A new episode of Marijuanderers is going to be coming back and going up, so please check that out. When you get sick with a cold, and as you can tell, I still don't have much of a voice yet. Not that it was ever good to begin with, but we're just trying to get it all back to air quote normal. You'd be surprised how much it can take out of you. Now, just your normal, common walking around cold is completely different. The problem that I have is that anytime I get any kind of head cold or anything like that, it automatically turns into a sinus infection. Well, that might have something to do with the couple of surgeries that I've had to clean things out, which probably had something to do with the amount of consumables that went, in and around and up my nose when I was a younger gentleman. Yeah, no shame, no foul, no nothing like that. I'm just saying it was one of those things that happened. This is the life that I lead now. Now there is, and they said there's no known cure for the common cold or anything like that, but I disagree. I disagree. I think that there absolutely is a cure for the common cold. And the cure is called LSD, acid. I do believe full-heartedly that LSD cures the common cold. I think that LSD was actually created as a cure for the common cold, but unfortunately it has these side effects that when taken, not only do they get rid of your common cold, they also cause you to see a bunch of other things possibly. Not really something that they could give out to the public. Here's your $5 common cold killer. Pay no attention to the side effects. It might even come back in 20 years as a flashback. And you're like, what? The cold? No. The effects of this drug that you took to get rid of your cold. But that said, when I was younger, I don't do LSD anymore. When I was younger, you get a cold, drop a hit of acid, next morning, no cold. Now you might have a, pen full of chickens and a car that's not really yours parked in your parking spot in the driveway, but you don't have a cold. Might have some explaining to do to the neighbors, but you don't have a cold. So shout out to LSD. I can't believe I just fucking said that. That is so ridiculous. Now, there is also a thing called taking too much LSD. One of my topics that I was written down in the description when we were talking about what we're going to talk about here on TIDtalk. It's a lot of talk, all in one sentence. And yes, there is a thing as taking too much LSD. Now, I don't mean because like you're going to do something so ridiculous, like, take a header off a bridge or, think that you can fly for some whatever reason. But there is such a thing as too much LSD, because when I was younger, if you go back and you watch some of these other TID Talks, you'll see that I used to sell a lot of pot. And when I got busted and had to leave Las Vegas, It was because I got busted with a gram of pot, a gram of cannabis, a gram of marijuana, whatever you want to call it, but a gram of cannabis, which is nothing. In those standards, today's standards, any friggin' standards, it's nothing. But I got busted with it because it was illegal. Not much or not, illegal is illegal, right? And I also had on me 4 hits of acid. So I used to consume and sell it. The problem, and when I say yes, you can, there's a thing as too much acid, is because acid is one of those drugs that, like, you would take it one day. So you take 1 hit one day. And then the next day, if you wanted to get that high again, you had to take 2. You literally had to double up every day. So by day 3 of being on acid, right, you're up to 4 hits. On day 4, you're at 8. On day 5, you're at 16. You want to go, you know what I mean? You want to be that high, be that high. When I was younger and we used to just, tool around in the desert and be asshats, you'd take a lot of acid just to have fun through the day. But you would literally have to think about that. Day 5, and you've had to take 16 hits of acid just to be as high as you were when you took that 1 hit on day 1. So yeah, there is, because clearly it's doing a problem. It's doing a problem. It's creating a problem for your body. 16 can't be good. Now, did I ever do acid again after I left Las Vegas? Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I can remember this one time. So I used to play in a metal band. I used to play drums. And so inside of that whole circle of people, there's a lot of partying, much like every circle of people has it. But I think that it was a different type of drug atmosphere that you may have been around inside of that circle of people. There's a lot more pot, mushrooms, acid, not your big fancy expensive drugs like cocaine and shit like that. Ecstasy, not really the bag. But acid was a thing. And I can remember one time going to a party at one of these warehouse parties. These people would rent out like just an abandoned warehouse and have parties. Or somebody lived in one of these warehouses that they would convert into like jam spaces and rehearsal spaces, and somebody lived there and they'd have a party, and it would always spill out into the hallways and to everywhere else. And I can remember being, with a group of friends, and this was middle of winter in Canada, and we go to this party, and everybody's having a great time, and I'm on 2 hits of acid, a lot of pot, probably a little bit of alcohol as well, I'm sure. Because one of the things is when you take that much, you take a lot of other things too. And I can remember walking up this staircase, and there was some guy manhandling a girl in the stairwell, and nobody is saying or doing anything. It's one girlfriend of hers decides to try to step in, and he ends up pushing her down the stairs. Well, this causes a great big kerfuffle. Now everybody's attention is being had. And for some reason, I end up in it with this guy. Shocking, I know. And now all of a sudden he wants to fight me, and I grab him and we go tumbling down the stairs. Fight gets broken up. And I'm like, well, time for me to go. And as I go, I realize people that I came there with already gone, like split, gone. I don't know if they split at that moment or, you know, when it happened. So I kind of hung out front for a little bit. The girl, obviously, she came out and tried to thank me. And at which point I was like, I don't even know how I'm going to get home. Now, where I lived at the time was probably about, I'd say, a good solid 25 miles away. And this was middle of the night by the time this had all happened because everybody was high. But I was like, if I stick around this place, I'm going to end up getting into way worse of a fight, especially now that all of my friends are gone and I'm just kind of like this guy really high, really alone at this thing. I'm like, even being that high, you had to have the your wits about you to know that it was time to go. That was always the thing for me when I would do acid, do LSD, was it was one of those, how much can I take and still try to fight that fight of staying in control? I know it's a weird, I don't know if anybody else out there does that, but it's a weird kind of thing when you're like, okay, let's do a science experiment. Let's take drugs and then see if you can stay in control of yourself while the drugs take over your body. Even saying it out loud, it makes absolutely zero sense that somebody would have this mentality, but absolutely I did. I did. And so I knew that it was still time for me to go and I had to get home. And I also, on top of all of this, at this point, I had no shirt. Gotten ripped off in the rolling of down the stairs or whatever. So it's middle of winter, like January, right? It's colder than the witch's tit. I've got no shirt, tattooed, and I've got to figure out how I'm going to get another 25 miles away to get home. This is like a really, really bad Canadian version of the Warriors with one person and absolutely nobody chasing him. Just a fucking idiot trying to find his way home without, asking anybody for help, because you didn't have that trust factor. Nope. Not taking me to some place that I don't know about when I'm this high. So you figure it out and you start walking. And you literally walk all the way home. Now, the nice thing about being that high is that you don't feel the elements. And you're walking at such a pace that, you burn, you build up a little bit of body warmth. But that doesn't make it any better. And then you end up catching pneumonia and you're sick the next day. And that was always the one thing as well, is that you do always feel sick the next day. I think that was one of the reasons that you would just take more acid to bring you back to where you were. But I woke up the next day and I started thinking about it, and I was like, why would you put yourself into that position? I think it was just obviously someplace in my mind where you were raised to stick up for people, even if you didn't know them. If you could tell that they were being wronged in any way, shape, or form, you had to do the right thing. You had to at least say something about it. It helps, when you have a stupid big mouth like I do, right? It also helps to be big enough that most people think twice before engaging to the next level on stuff, which is always what I hope for. I don't know if you know this or not. I don't like getting punched. I mean, who does? I mean, there are people out there that like to fight and stuff like that. I'm not one of those people. Anyways, woke up the next morning and I said to myself, you really have to stop trying to put yourself into these positions. And then I also thought to myself, you really need to get a real job at this point. And a guy that I knew who was, I started working at clubs. I got a job, and we talked about that. I got a job working at a club. And this club that I worked at was probably one of the busiest nightclubs in all of Toronto. 3 floors, including a rooftop patio. That's right. A rooftop patio that, they just let people hang out on the rooftop getting drunk. And we're talking like 19, 20, 22, you know what I mean? Young people, kids. And they'd have bands play up there, and they would do live to air things from the one of the busiest radio stations. And I ran the door there, and then somebody had contacted me through all of that about doing bodyguarding work. And one of the first gigs that we did was for a TV show. And now you think to yourself, why do TV shows need bodyguards? Well, the show was one of those like talk show, like a Jerry Springer show or a Sally Jesse Raphael, Ricky Lake, one of those types of shows. And it was a show called The Camilla Scott Show. And Camilla Scott was an actress. I think she did some work in soap opera for the longest time. And a Canadian actress, worked on, I think, Days of Our Lives or one of those fucking things. I don't know. I'm guessing which one it was because I honestly don't remember. But she had a name. There's no doubt about it. And she did the show, and it was, very kind of like that afternoon, almost tongue in cheek. The topics, it was really kind of weird. Russell Peters was a guest on there one time. So she would do these episodes where it was like Camilla Court was what the episode might have been called. And there did a couple of them. One of them was a comedian, Mike Bullard. Was a former cop, had a restaurant in Toronto, but he was the judge on one of these episodes. And then on one of these other episodes, Russell Peters, gigantically huge comedian, world renowned now, but was on this little Canadian talk show where they would, get people up on stage to talk about how they're pissed off at their roommate. It was, it had sometimes kind of that Jerry Springer vibe, but being very Canadian, where by the end of it, everybody was saying sorry and apologizing. For the record, I don't say sorry like that. It's sorry. Sorry, Canadians, eh? No. Even being here since 1988, I do not have a oot and a boot accent like Canadians do. But anyways, this show, they would have these episodes. One of the times I was the bailiff. So as people got found guilty by Judge Russell Peters, yeah, wacky, right? You'd get to walk them off stage and put them into a little jail cell on stage, like crazy, right? You think. Now the cool thing was that the studios where they shot this stuff was also the same studios that they used to shoot a fantastically funny show called Bizarre. It was a Canadian-made product with John Biner, the birth of one Super Dave Osborne. If you don't know who he is, look him up. Hilarious stuff. Where it came from there. And some of the set stuff that they had from the Bizarre show, which was like this variety show, John Biner variety show with different skits and, stuff like that. Like the Bigot family, It's clearly stuff that you could not do now. But all of that stuff was still sitting around in the studios in some places. So that was kind of cool for me. And the job is that like somebody always had to be like in the crowds. You'd have security literally sitting plants in the crowd. If you can ever look up some of these shows and go back, you can see where we've got bodies sitting in the crowd, right? And then you've got a couple people side stage on each side. And you've got somebody who is always got eyeballs on the host, follows the host to the dressing room, follows the host from the dressing room to the limo, in the limo or the car, you know what I mean? Home and then back. Go in the morning, pick them up, take them to the studio, do the entire day at the studio. Because even though you would think like, why? I mean, Canadians are so nice. Why would there ever be any kind of issue or anything like that? Well, there's still a few psychopaths out there, believe it or not. That show, a TV show, would get, I'm not even kidding, would get at least 2 to 3 bomb threats a week. And every single time we would have to go in and sweep the entire studio, right? Us as the security. Not bringing in actual, bomb squad people unless we found something. But it would always be somebody would call in, right, to try to be disruptive or whatever. This is also the same day and age where you would have live call-in shows. And I've got a friend of mine that still hopefully still has the VHS tapes of where he would call into these shows, prank call into these shows, and then tape them while they were, while he was on. A fantastic bit. It was like the early days. This is, we're talking before like, Crank Yankers and the Jerky Boys and stuff like that. Fantastic bit. Super easy stuff. So for people to call into the Camilla Scott show and there's a bomb in the building or, whatever the case may be, is like, oh, fuck's sakes. Now we've got to keep an entire live audience, right, in holding while we swept through the entire studio, everything, right? Then find out, nope, nothing actually here. Bring in the thing, sets the whole timing. It's jokes. And that wasn't even the worst. There was actually a time that it was the end of the show, and we're walking, and by we, I mean me and my split personalities, apparently, walking the host to the vehicle. We leave out a side door. And literally it was, you go out the side door first, boop, boop, eyeballs left, eyeballs right, check it all out. All right, cool, we can go. It's wacky, the types of infatuation that people would have with low level, and no disrespect meant to her or anything like that, but in the grand scheme of things, lower level celebrity and wanting to get close to them. And one time, sure as shit, somebody actually jumped out of the bushes when she came out the door with me. I didn't see this person in the fucking bushes. They were buried. Fucking might as well have been wearing like a ghillie suit and whatever, right? They're buried in there. And they jump out of the bushes. And of course, you stop them and grab them because fucking nerds. And all they wanted was a hug and an autograph. That is the weirdest thing in the world, man. Like, I don't like touching people to begin with, but I can't imagine hiding out and waiting for somebody to come out so that you could get an autograph because you missed your opportunity or she didn't feel like it. Here's the thing. If she didn't feel like doing it before and hanging out with the entire audience and making sure that everybody got an autograph before they left that day, it's because she didn't fucking want to. And Probably doesn't want to when she's on her way home. It's a weird flex. And I thought, it's strange to me that people would behave like this. And then I get a call. Then we get a call to do private work because Bollywood was coming to town. And Bollywood was these, if you're not familiar, they do these live Bollywood shows with the dancing and the singing, and they bring over these stars of the movies at the time. And I remember that world famous Miss World or something like that, Ashwarna Rai, I want to say. Most of the other people I don't even want to venture a guess at pronouncing because I would just butcher it and it would be embarrassing, and I don't want to do that. But they would bring these stars over, like, movie stars, huge movie stars. If you know anything about Bollywood, like I do now, massive celebrity. And they'd bring them over on these tours, and put them up in different hotels. And so our crews were separated. And then they would have these big shows, typically, for example, like at the ACC, the Air Canada Center, where the Toronto Raptors play, where the Toronto Maple Leafs play, right? Arenas like that. They'd rent out this entire thing and they would pack it to the point of standing room only so that these people could get a chance at seeing their favorite Bollywood star. So much so that the hotels that they would put these stars up at were not, for the most part, they would not even stay at the same hotels. Because if you knew that all of them were staying at the same hotel, you would think, well, that might pose a problem. And sure as shit, because I can remember I had detail on one of the stars, and we had gone to the hotel. Like we met them at the airport when they flew in, picked them up, put them into private vehicles, and we're going to the hotel. And we've got, our driver and one other person, and we know which hotel we're going to, and off you'd go. And it was like something out of a movie. You know what I mean? You got your black vehicles and everybody comes out from the airport at the same time and starts off, and then everybody starts splintering off into different directions. Because you did have people following you. This was wacky to me. And then you'd get to the hotel where just your celebrity was staying, and there would be a mob. And nobody told anybody where these people were staying. This was just like underground word of mouth, right? Craziness. We're talking, a couple hundred people waiting at a hotel to get a chance to see this person before they went to the show. And you would literally have to, I don't want to say fight your way through the crowd, but you had to figure out a way to get through the crowd. And hopefully a lot of the time was that you would have to go to the underground service entrances to get these people into the hotels. This is wild and a little bit fucking corny, if you ask me. And then you would get to the show. Then you would, transport, they'd do their thing. And then you'd get to the show and you'd pull up to the arena, and you drive in, and then you step outside, and they've got like their own security. You're just there on detail for the celebrities. And then you realize when you walk out the madness, the absolute madness that these normal people that you've just been hanging out with, right? For the most part, because they get in very early. You got to hang out with them, one person in the hotel room with them, a hotel suite, I should say, and one person in the hallway, right? If they didn't want anybody in the room, then you had two people hanging out in the hallway. Most of the time, they're like, "Yeah, do your job." They're used to it, and you're just hanging out, talking about how they got into this, and they tried to spend the time. Person that I was on detail tried to spend the time letting me know how crazy these things can get. Telling me a story how they did one of these in an outdoor festival that just turned into absolute and complete mayhem because they didn't expect that. What they expected was something like 10 to 15,000 people that turned into over 100,000 people. They didn't have the ability to stop anything. So after like 15 minutes, they had to cancel the whole thing. And, this is before people even took the stage. So thankfully, nobody got mobbed, kidnapped, hurt, or anything like that. Just a lot of pissed off fans. And I'm thinking to myself, that's insanity. Well, thankfully, this is indoors, and there's probably going to be a half full arena. And then you get in there, and you're like, no, that is an absolutely packed fucking arena, and all of these people are clamoring, crying like it was fucking Elvis. But to them, it is. To the fans of this stuff, it absolutely is. And then I would get calls as well, to go do private parties. And by private engagements, like Caravana was a big thing for a lot of parties before it kind of got ruined by people. Thankfully, it's starting to come back to being a happy party thing. But there would always be these after parties or these parties going along with it, and you'd get a lot of celebrities that would come up, and they would do these special parties, and you'd get asked to head up. Our security company that we had would get asked to head up all of the private end of stuff, and it just got to a point. It got to a point where it was getting a lot more dangerous out there. It was getting a lot more dangerous because I never really got into the idea of doing it because I wanted to have to wear a bulletproof vest every day, right? Because you still didn't have the ability to carry a gun. It wasn't like in the States doing security detail. What did you have? You know what I mean? You still had to dress nice, right? Dress appropriately, black on black on black. And the most you could carry was like a collapsible stick, like those collapsible batons, right? That's about it. Doesn't do you a whole hell of a lot of good if somebody else has a gun. And these are some of the things that I found out because at this time I doing all this other stuff, I was also still working at a nightclub. And like I said, I was working at, one of the busiest clubs ever. We were running the front door there. We were making money hand over fist. Like ridiculous. And that was just for people to get into the club. You still had to pay the cover charge to get in, right? But I could get you past the line, right? Get you some special privilege there, which usually just, led to us trying to pick up. That was literally what it was you would pick out beautiful people, guys and girls, and fill your club with that because that's what the owners wanted. Because in doing so the club itself was, taken off from the Ballingers. Ballingers are big nightclub owners in New York. You can look them up. Some of the stuff that Limelight in New York, I believe, was their big one, if I'm not mistaken. And so they wanted, the people that ran these clubs wanted celebrity coming in. They wanted that place to look like it was the biggest, busiest, and best club ever. And there was a few places like this. There was an entire group called Liberty Group that owned a bunch of clubs. The Phoenix, Government, Joker, and then some smaller ones, as well. But these were like big, huge nightclubs because that was the thing, right? That was the thing. You had these monster clubs bringing in monster dollars, selling so much alcohol, destroying millions of livers, and putting a lot of cash into the system. No doubt about it, right? Nightclubs like that, cash money all day, every day. So we would create lineups of people trying to get in. So much so there was a hotline that you could call, right? There was a company outside of the club that came to us, and it's one of the guys that I do Godfathers of podcasting with, my co-host Donnie. Was in charge of a company that you could call a hotline to get past the lineup, right? Just to get into the club. You would call this number, put your name on there, and then Donnie would stand outside, on the sidewalk, and you'd walk up to him. I'm on the whatever it was, the Club Connection, I think was, Club Connection VIP list. You would have your name. Yep, off you go. Into the club you would go. There would always be a VIP lineup for people on the list from the club. And then there was the regular lineup. And the regular lineup to get into this club on a given Sunday, when they would do live to air with shout out to the late, great Martin Streak. When they would do these live to air things, the lineup would go down a city block and around the corner another city block, to where City TV, for anybody who is, Canadian listening, City TV was on the opposite side of that block. They had this thing called Speaker's Corner, which is like a phone booth on the corner where you can go and just like put in some money and talk some shit, or do some grievances, or flash your tits, or make out, or propose, or it was, one of those like original kissing booths, but it got put on TV, so everybody was extra fucking flex in the whole thing. But we would create these lineups of hundreds of people waiting to get into the club and then filter them in. And then through the VIP lineup as well, like sometimes we would double dip. And that's where you take somebody out of the regular lineup and you're like, because they would come up to you and be like, hey, how much for 4 of us to get past the lineup? Well, for 4 of you to get past the lineup, it's going to be $100. It's easy. Got a $100 bill. You go into a nightclub. Of course, you got a fucking $100 bill in your pocket. If you don't, go to the bank machine and get one. Simple. Now that $100 just gets you past the lineup. You still got to pay your cover charge, like I said. And typically, sometimes, if we knew that we had a mark on the hook there, is you would take and you'd tell them that $100 is going to get you into the VIP lineup, and one moves way faster, and they'd go for it. And then you'd have them sitting in the VIP lineup, and if they really wanted to get in fast, well, that's going to cost them again. But again, still got to pay the cover charge. You still got to pay the cover charge because I'm not taking money out of the club's pocket. Although in, hindsight, they did kind of look at it like we were taking money out of their pocket because it could have been money that they were spending on alcohol. Now, maybe pay your guys better. That's all I'm saying. Now, those days are long gone of, clubs having like where they would hire the security. Now it's like security companies that run for the clubs, for the most part, for the big ones, because you got to have some sense of deniability when shit goes down, as opposed to before. If shit went down, it was literally one of your employees, and you'd have to go to court, because somebody got tossed out too hard. Somebody got beat up on your sidewalk. Somebody got, whatever the case may be. But you would have to end up going to court. And nowadays you don't have to. You just put it off to the security company, right? That has done it. So we would create these lineups and have all of these people around, and it was just as much of an atmosphere outside of the clubs as it was inside of the club. Just, more lighting and colder in the wintertime. But then you would have people that would just pull up right in front of the club, or we would know so-and-so is coming to the club, right? And we'd always have like that ultra VIP right out the front, open up the red velvet rope with the stanchions, right? And let them right into the front, right past everybody. So everybody could see. It's the same shit you see in the fucking movies, right? This was going on for years and years and years. And it would always crack me up, for the most part, some of these guys were the greatest. Fantastic. Wade Boggs, New York Nets baseball player, salt of the earth. That's the guy that you want coming to your club. He's just there to have a good fucking time. And he did on many occasions. I can tell you there was a few occasions where we had to help. And by help, I mean wedge. And by wedge, I mean carry. And by carry, I mean all of those things to a cab to get him back to his hotel. And he wasn't the only one. This would happen. There was no accountability for, there was hardly any accountability for the civilians that came to the club, let alone the celebrities that came to the club. A gentleman like him, fantastic. I can remember one time I'm standing out in the club, and it's spring. And we're standing out there, and it's slightly warm, slightly warmer weather. It's not cutoff weather. You know what I mean? It's not shorts weather, but it's t-shirt weather, right? So everybody's got their fucking guns out, of course. His car pulls up in the front, and I'm like, I wasn't expecting anybody. All right, let's see who this is. And out steps Tony Little. I don't know if any of you remember who Tony Little is. Tony Little was a guy who he was that on TV, kind of short little stocky dude with a long ponytail, did the ab exerciser machines and like the Gazelle glider exercise machines. Tony Little was, let's see here. This was Tony Little. Okay. There you go. And this guy shows up, right, at the club one time and pulls up to the club, gets out of the car. He's not on any kind of list. So, these guys, they try to grease your hands up a little bit. You know what I mean? Hey, I don't want to wait in the line. I don't know if you know who I am. I am a low-level guy who's on an infomercial, right? I'm a very famous infomercial guy. I sell ab exercise equipment and yet don't have any abs left. Now, he used to be a bodybuilder, and then I think he was in an accident, had a bunch of injuries, caused him so that he couldn't train the way that he did before. Also, it put better use to the things that he was putting into his body as opposed to trying to make his muscles look more muscly. I'm not saying that he did. I'm just saying that if it walks like a duck, chances are it might be a fucking duck. So Tony Little pulls up into the front of the club one time, and he hops out of the car, and I'm like, oh, hey, how you doing, Mr. Little? Thank you for coming. And he tries to grease my palm. And usually, you shake their hand, and they've got some kind of monetary donation, right, in their hand, and they slide it to you, and then you hold the thing open, and off they go. Everybody's seen it in the movies. It's no big secret. There's no new way of ever doing it. You know what I mean? I guess now you could probably just like Venmo Dorman at the door, send him some PayPal, transfer some Bitcoin to try to get into a club. I don't know. But he does this, and I look down at my hand, and it's a $5 bill. A $5 bill. The cover was more than $5. To get past the line was more than $5. You didn't show up at the door with any kind of gifts for the doorman or for the club, nor were you on a list. And you try to slide $5. By the time I split that up between everybody, it would be about 33 cents a piece. All right? Get fucked. But I'm not going to cause a scene at this point. No, that would be stupid, right? So I say to him, I said, let me escort you in up there. And I open up the door for him, and we walk past the girl that's doing the door. And I've got a couple of drink tickets on me, and I walk him up to the first floor, and walk up to the bar, and I introduce him to the bartender. I'm doing my thing. I'm a host at this point, right? Not a doorman, not a bouncer, a host at this point. And we walk up to the bar, and I give him a drink, and I slap down some drink tickets. I slap down some drink tickets in front of him on the bar. I'm like, Tony, here's some drink tickets, please. Enjoy the first, 5, right? On us. It's a pleasure to have you here at the club. Hope you have a fantastic time. If you need anything, please feel free to ask anybody. They'll take care of you. And I go to leave, and I shake his hand. And when I shake his hand, I slide that $5 right back into his hand. And I look at him, and I'm like, you're going to need this more than I do. Use it as a tip for one of the bartenders. And I walk out. And at that point, it's really the best thing that you could possibly do to somebody, because he knew he fucked up. He knew that it was a dick move to try to slide somebody a fucking $5 bill to get into the busiest nightclub in the city, past a lineup that people are waiting an hour and a half, right, to get in. Tony Little is the guy's name. Tony Horton here, who? No, Tony Little. Look him up. Infomercial guy selling gym equipment. It was fantastic. I can remember one time we had a rapper show up, a musician, we'll say, a musician. And across the street was another club. And this is because inside of this area was called the Entertainment District. So there was a bunch of littler clubs and bigger clubs and whatnot in this 2 to 4 block city block radius. And my old tag partner in professional wrestling, Magnus, Mark, this is his real name, still is, he ran the door at the club across from us. And the club across from us was a little bit more high end, much smaller, much more low key. It's not where you went to get your on, you know what I mean? You went to chill. There was pool tables in there, and it was very much more upscale. Only a few people would get into there, whereas with us it was like, you're spending money, and we gotta get a lot of people in and out of these doors, so let's go, right? His was more of a lounge. Mine was more of a nightclub. But you would always have some fun across the street with one another. And one of the things that we would do was, for example, this guy shows up at our club, and I didn't want him in our club just because he's trouble. And he shows up, he's one of these guys that walks up and has to send somebody up to the door, right? Send somebody up to the door to, hey, yo, do you know who that is? Him and, we want to come into the club. And it's like, okay, first of all, you're not on that fucking level that you should be sending anybody to the door to talk on your behalf. Second of all, I don't like your music. So why am I going to do you any favors? It's not one person, it's you and your 5 friends, and you're going to think you're going to go in and not spend any money, harass people with your do you know who I am stories, right? It's just not worth it to me. It's not worth it to the club. It's not worth it to the clientele. So my biggest thing that I would always do, I was like, listen, guys, we're really packed up. I'm sorry, you can see my numbers. I'd have a clicker in my hand. I'm like, we are really packed up. We are at the like, one in, one out type of thing right now. And it's not where you guys want to be tonight. It's mayhem tonight. Where you guys want to go is you guys want to go across the street over there. You guys want to go over there. It's much more chill. It's much more adult. It's much more people that play the game that you guys are playing. Just go talk to my boy over there, right? And I'd wave over to Mag, like, yep, talk to him right over there. He'll get you all set up. And they'd get about halfway across the street and Mag would disappear. He'd pretend he's got somebody talking in his ear, and back into the club he would go and make them wait 15, 20 minutes. He'd come walking back out and they're still standing there. And then he would say to him, oh, shit, I'm so sorry, guys. Unfortunately, we're at capacity right now, but, and I'd be over across the street. I'm like, guys, we got a few. Come on back. And we would do this. We would play ping pong with people. No, we got room in our club, and play ping pong with them until they would get so frustrated, they would just leave. They'd leave the corner, leave the block, and go someplace else. This was kind of the stupid things that we would do to have fun with, people that thought that they were cooler than they really are. That gentleman's name, is he a gentleman? Gentleman's name is Darren. That's what we're going to say. So, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, and all of you that have joined me today on this glorious Sunday, I appreciate you all. I appreciate that you take the time to listen to these stories. I appreciate that you take an interest. Yes, Tiff, a rapper named Darren. Look that one up. Maybe somebody can figure it out. All right, his name is Snow. He had a big hit called Informer. And that's who we wouldn't let in. That's just one of them. It wasn't like he was, singled out for an ever. It was just a one-night stand. There was many, many others. And we always had carte blanche at any of the other clubs. And then we would also have meals cooked for us by the hot dog guys that used to hang out in front of the clubs, selling their stuff to the people that got out of the clubs. And the rule always is that if you want to set up here, you got to take care of my doorman. You've got to take care of us. And I mean, like, if they want a hot dog or if they want a sausage at the end of the night, you just give them one. And also once a week, because we were there 4 nights a week, and once a week on Sundays, the busiest night, at the end of the shift, you have steaks ready. And they would. We had a guy out there who would show up and he would have steaks for us Sunday afterwards. All the sausages or hot dogs that you wanted. And all you had to do was just make sure that he didn't get robbed. That was it. Because, college kids, engineering students, right? People that threaten lawsuits. And that was one of the reasons that I got out of it. I got out of doing all of it because it got to the point where you could have an altercation with somebody and throw them out. And that was it. And then it turned into you'd have an altercation with somebody and they would try to, fight with you or whatever, unsuccessfully, because it's always drunk people taking on trained, sober people. It never ends well. I don't know why people continue to try to do that stuff, fighting with doormen and bouncers and security. It's silly. And then it turned into you would throw somebody out, get into, a little bit of violence upon them, and they would threaten to sue you. because their dad was whoever, or they were a law student. That was the best. Always my favorite. I'm a law student. Well, then you haven't got to the part where you learned that you're a fucking dumbass. And then it got to the point where people would get thrown out and then they'd threaten to come back and shoot the place up. We had one time somebody actually, got thrown out. They left. And all of a sudden a car comes pulling around the corner, just a normal car, not a car dropping off a celebrity or anything like that, and pulls up and stops right in front of the doors, right in front of the club where we're standing. Stops right there. And this is just a civilian piece of shit fucking Cutlass or something like that. And the hood or the trunk pops open. And I'm standing right there. And I look over as the trunk pops open. And as the trunk pops open and the person is getting out of the driver's seat, I notice it's the guy that we just kicked out. And I also noticed that in the trunk of the car is a gun, a shotgun laying right there. So I slammed the trunk shut because clearly he pushed the button and tried to get out thinking nobody was going to notice. Nope, you ain't getting into there. And that turned into, a lot of paperwork, and he got taken down in the middle of the street and the cops got called and he got arrested. But what if I hadn't noticed? What if somebody wasn't standing right there? What if this guy was able to get into the trunk of his car and grab a loaded shotgun and try shooting people? What if? There was an incident where we had doormen at a club a block away that used to work with us at the club we were at a block away. They had people come get kicked out of there and then came back the next week with a group of people, like a posse, came back with baseball bats. One of those doormen ended up in the hospital in a coma for a long time. Came out of it, thankfully. Came out of it. But when it was happening, yes, half of my doormen, including myself, abandoned our posts. A lot of doormen from other clubs abandoned their post to go help these other guys out who were getting attacked by, 20 dudes with baseball bats. It was insanity sometimes. So what if I wasn't there when that gun was seen? Or what if it was somebody else and they didn't pay attention? People would have died. And this was one of the reasons for myself. And I wasn't allowed to wear, we weren't allowed to wear bulletproof vests at the door or even in the club. It sent a bad message. And I get that part. You don't want, if I'm a patron at a club, I don't want to go to a place that, the people that work there feel so unsafe that they have to put on protective gear to work at this place. I don't want to go to that club. I don't feel safe there. I want to go to a place where I feel safe, where I can just party and drink, fucking do Molly and fucking whatever, right? So it was for that reason that I was like, listen, I got to get out of this line of work. I absolutely have to get out of this line of work. And I was making good money. Fuck the money that you were making from the fucking club. You know what I mean? You're making fuck all. You're making, $150 a night, $200 a night from them. But the real money is what you were making hustling the people outside. The hustle was just simple stuff. New Year's Eve, you'd buy New Year's Eve tickets off of people that couldn't fucking make it and then resell it to somebody who's standing right there because it was only tickets only. There was no door. If you didn't have a ticket, you weren't getting into the club. The club thought that was their way of limiting, the doorman of being able to make money. It was like, no, we're just going to do it this way. There's always a way. But the danger just became too fucking ridiculous. And I wasn't allowed to wear a fucking bulletproof vest, like I said. Wasn't allowed to carry a gun. So I'm already putting myself at a disadvantage to these people that want to inflict harm because they got butthurt because they couldn't follow the fucking rules of the place that they were in, and their actions threatened to have a number of people's livelihoods taken away from them by doing illegal shit inside of the club. That's it. But they got butthurt, and everybody turned into tough guys, And then everybody turned into tough guys with lawsuits. And then everybody turned into tough guys with fucking guns because they realized their lawsuits weren't doing anything. Right? It was the evolution of stupid with people going to clubs. It really is. So I said, I'm out. I'm out. And I got into the world of advertising. And I got into the world of professional wrestling. That was a way better choice. And we're going to talk about that stuff next week. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining me on this weekly journey of my stupid fucking life, or as I like to call it, a TIDtalk. It's now time to go watch some football. This has been episode 10. Those of you that are in fantasy leagues, as long as you're not playing against me, I wish you all of the luck in the world. If you're playing against me, I wish a pox upon thee. All right. For those who have teams that are playing today, as long as I'm betting on your team, I hope that they win. My team, the Philadelphia Eagles, go Birds, do not play until the Monday night game, you know, where the fancy people play. With you Sunday peons, celebrities, stars that are the Philadelphia Eagles. Anyways, enough of my bullshit. Tiff, thank you for the fun morning. Terry Nee, thank you for stopping by. Nilo, God damn it, you gorgeous son of a bitch. Thank you so much for stopping by. Johnny 1.0, the very first person to send a message out. Guys, hit that like button on the way out. If you don't mind, please share this. Go ahead. Share it. I dare you. Don't forget, we are going to be doing an episode of Marijuanderers tonight, 9 o'clock. We're on Rumble and probably right here as well. And until then, hope you all take care. Have a lovely day. And, we'll speak soon.